Here we go again. Worst place in the world. Rolling Heights ball.
Most famous words to ever be spoken by a video game character in probably the entire history of gaming. Words so powerful that even today, 20 years later after its initial release, people still use them in a wide variety of memes and jokes all over the internet. Proving once again what a cult classic this piece of media was, is, and will be even in the distant dystopian future when Big Smoke's order turns out to be filled with bugs and lab meat instead of beef and fries. This game really did the unthinkable and made every single person who had no prior experience with the ghetto end up becoming the most feared gangster in the world. Well, at least for the 30 hours of playtime inside of a fake video game world, but still, experience is what matters. Of course, if you haven't already figured out which game I'm talking about, it's GTA 5, before GTA 5 was even a coke binge afterthought of Sam and Dan Houser. It's the game that made an entire generation fall in love with music so damn good that we memorized the radio stations better than anything we learned in school. Albeit, all my learning came from pieces of media anyway, so I guess it might just be the schooling system itself. Anyway, I'm talking about one of the, if not the best, open world games of all time. GTA San Andreas. With the intro out of the way, I just want to take a quick moment to thank all of you for watching and remind you that by leaving a like, you help out the channel a lot. Thank you. The year is 1992 and Carl Johnson just returned home saying these goddamn words that want to make the 8-year-old me curl up in a ball and cry my guts out.
Grove Street. Home. At least it was before I fucked everything up.
I don't know what it is, but the intro sequence of Carl getting home from Liberty City after 5 years on the East Coast, along with the Grove Street home part, always evokes a feeling of nostalgia that no other game that I've ever played has managed to replicate. Anyways, now that Carl is home, his real adventure begins when he's greeted by the second biggest rat known to man, Big Puffy. And if you ask yourself why he is the second, the first place belongs to the most hated person in the shared GTA RDR universe, Micah Bell. He takes CJ to his mother's funeral, and CJ meets his old pal Ryder, his big brother Ice Cube, and of course his sister Kendall Jenner, who's dating a Mexican immigrant, as this game was way ahead of its time when it came to being inclusive. After the funeral and being called a buster by both his brother and Ryder, I mean Eazy-E, he takes a conveniently placed bike and pedals home while being chased by local P. Diddlers who all want a share of his virgin hole. He of course manages to pedal back home to Grove Street, and this is where the game gives the player full freedom on how to approach the next steps. Carl then proceeds to do a few missions with Ryder, Big Smoke and Sweet, which all pretty much revolve around the usual hood activities: tagging up turf, robbing a pizza place, getting a buzz cut, and even some prison tattoos. Please note that this is not me joking, just stating what the game actually makes you do. I mean, if we really want to point out how offensive this game might come off today to certain members of society, you have the main character spawn in and immediately steal someone's bike from their backyard. Ah, good old Rockstar. Okay, moving on. After doing the first few initial missions with the gang, I decide to take a different approach and do something that I always wanted to do, but never had the chance as I was missing a memory card for my PS2 and I couldn't really save or reload. And of course, if you're asking yourself what the hell is this man on about, I'm talking about the best and most easiest way to get rich in this game, and that's gambling. Of course, I'm talking about horse races, but my dumbass kid brain always thought it was dogs. Instead of going to complete more missions, I make it my #1 priority to get CJ out of the hood and having him eat good. Albeit, he has to suffer a bit by living in baller country, but that's the price he has to pay to move up in the food chain. At least this way, he doesn't have to attend Diddy parties and sell his virgin whole to get some scraps and pretend he's successful. Once CJ has enough money and doesn't need to worry about anything anymore, I start buying up property all over Los Santos and start renting them out on Airbnb so he can have a constant stream of money coming in while other folks barely manage to dish out enough for their car payment. This might be harsh, but that is the reality that we currently live in, and quite honestly, it's extremely sad. Moving on, CJ completes a few more missions, starts taking over turf, and about a third into the game, the Mexican immigrant Trump wanted to stop from coming in tells him the truth about Ryder and Big Smoke, who betrayed Grove Street and ended up killing both CJ's brother Brian and his mother. After this, CJ is kidnapped by Samuel L. Jackson Jackson, and the late brother of Sean Penn, who basically play themselves in this game. Officer Tenpenny and Pulaski were already introduced earlier in the game and technically serve as the main antagonists of the game. I forgot to mention that, as my brain is working hard on its last 2 brain cells to come up with jokes and puns that will not reference Diddy. After Tenpenny and Pulaski take CJ out into the countryside, they have him do a few missions for them which involve pretty much silencing witnesses and other types of typical corrupt government official activities. While in the countryside of Angel Pines in Whetstone County, CJ meets Caesar's cousin, who's a lovely young lady with absolutely no flaws at all. He also meets one of the most laid-back Tommy Chung-like characters called The Truth, who definitely seems like a guy who knows more than he's letting on. After meeting all these folks, he does a few missions with Catalina, The Truth, and even ends up in a race with a blind man named Woozy Woo. I forgot to mention that while all this is happening, the lovely lady Catalina ends up leaving Carl for the mute psychopath Claude, who I definitely wish all the best as he will need it 9 years into the future on a specific bank job. The lovely lady Catalina gives CJ a deed to a garage in San Fierro after he ends up beating Claude in a race. He heads to San Fierro after helping The Truth burn some crops, and by the way, Far Cry 3 definitely stole the idea for the game from this particular mission. Either way, both are extremely fun. Once CJ has arrived in San Fierro, he realizes that he got handed a giant pile of dung and that the garage is basically demolished. His sister tells him that this is an opportunity to start building something big, basically telling him that he can now become a full-time legit businessman by buying dumps like this and turning them into fully operational money laundering funds. He takes note and quickly starts acquiring all of the necessary businesses that will drive the plot forward. While in San Fierro, he does a few missions for Woozy, infiltrates the Loco Syndicate, and of course does some of the most annoying missions ever created in the history of gaming, the Zero missions. After completing all of those missions, he starts taking down the Loco Syndicate and proceeds to eliminate each and every one of the members, one by one. He takes out the P. Diddler first, then eliminates T-Bone Mendez and Ryder, before finally eliminating big evil government official Mike Torino. Or at least, that's what he thought he did, but Torino somehow manages to survive, being blown up. Carl is then tasked to head into Tierra Robada, where Torino for some reason tests his monster truck driving skills, which quite honestly makes absolutely zero sense. But CJ of course passes the test. He's then shocked to find out that it's Torino that tasked him with this, and he basically threatens Carl into obedience by telling him he will let P. Diddy loose on his brother in prison. CJ then proceeds to acquire an airstrip in the middle of a desert on behalf of Mike Torino, who bullies him into learning to fly.
So listen, now, you're gonna have to learn how to fly.
After completing flight school, CJ is then basically forced into becoming a full-on spy, pilot, and even a goddamn stuntman. After roaming the desert, completing a few missions for Torino and The Truth, he finally arrives to Las Venturas, probably one of the most beautiful cities in any video game from the 3D era. Once there, he meets with Woozy, does a few missions for him, saves Ken Paul from the desert, meets Ken Rosenberg, Salvatore Leone, and even ends up doing a few missions for him. Also, did I mention he actually goes back to Liberty City? Yeah. That's just how advanced this bloody game from 2004 was. Albeit it's a small linear segment, but seeing Liberty City all covered in snow and being able to explore it, even just for a second, was one of the best moments for me as a kid. After completing a few more missions, robbing a casino, and even helping the guy that he ended up ruining the career of to help his hood friend OG Loke, who by the way was definitely a part of Diddy parties back in the 90s, CJ finally returns to Los Santos to find it basically in perpetual hell. In Los Santos, CJ becomes Mad Dog's manager after successfully taking back his big-ass mansion. Mike Torino shows up and tells CJ that he has a final request for him. CJ is sick of his bullshit, but surprisingly, a government official is a man of his word and actually tells CJ that he just needs him to pick up his brother, Sweet, from prison. CJ, of course, immediately goes and picks up his brother as he doesn't want him getting deflowered on his last day in jail. After this, CJ has no choice but to start taking over territory in hopes of finding out where Big Puffy is hiding. He, of course, successfully manages to take over and manages to find out Big Smoke's location. After this, CJ and Sweet head towards his hideout, and CJ, being the absolute Giga Chad that he is, goes in alone. He mows down pretty much everyone in his path, including Big Smoke, and successfully avenges his family. This is cut short when Officer Tenpenny shows up and ends up taking all of Big Smoke's money before trying to escape Los Santos on a fire truck. This is of course a big mistake, as CJ and Sweet are persistent little bastards that will for sure not quit until Tenpenny is dealt with. And of course, after a long chase, Tenpenny ends up flipping his truck and crashing over a bridge, quite poetically landing right on Grove Street. CJ and the remaining gang and family members watch as Tenpenny crawls out and proceeds to slowly die in front of them. The end. Wow, what a banger of a game. Am I right? Anyway, now having talked about the story, I think it would be fair to mention that this game ended up selling over 27 million copies. With the re-release or supposed remastered versions called the Defective Edition, this game probably ended up selling even more copies, especially as those 3 games were bundled together and sold over 10 million units. That of course doesn't take away the fact that the Defective Edition was pure horse dung and should have never been given to Grove Street Games in the first place. Shame on you, Rockstar, and shame on you, Herr Strauss. Moving on, I have to say that I do a playthrough of this game at least once a year. It's one of my favorite Rockstar titles, and just the sheer amount of things that you can do is insane. This game is just like one of those good movies or shows that make you want to rewatch them to appreciate the godlike artistry behind them. In today's media that is filled with nothing but agendas, this game stands out as a testament to how you can cherish a culture and expand on key themes that are important to so many people, like family, friendship, and even love without pushing anything onto people. This is the old Rockstar that will be probably remembered 30 years from now for pushing out a game pretty much every single year. For many that grew up in the 2000s, I believe that this was their GTA 5, the game that came out and fully crushed the open world gaming market. And I can bet my ass that when they played GTA 5, they were fully disappointed, especially once they realized that 2/3 of the map is pretty much just mountains and a desert. I'm not saying the GTA 5 map is bad, but I remember how disappointed I was when I realized that there was not much out there. Over time, of course, I ended up loving it for what it is, but there's still a part of me that thinks GTA 5 should have had more to its map, especially when you compare it to the one in GTA San Andreas. It really does seem empty. Nonetheless, he's hoping that the future GTAs end up having expanding maps and locations that will make us all once again be proud of Rockstar's accomplishments. From the detailed, large map by PS2 standards, working gym, mini games, funky missions, funny cutscenes, and amazing characters, this game just had it all. When I take a look at everything that this game allowed you to do, I can't help but think of all the AAA titles today that don't even give you a fraction of freedom that this masterpiece gave us in 2004. I mean, yeah, we all pretty much used cheats and ran around like headless chicken, just shooting people, living out our sadistic serial killer fantasies, but how could you not when the game gave you the chance to actually roleplay as P. Diddy and go on a rampage with a goddamn dildo? Okay, jokes aside a bit for now, there's not a single game out on the market that allowed you to purchase so many properties and run so many different businesses like this one. I mean, hell, the amount of mini games and side activities exceeds pretty much the number of things some games offer as their main content. Looking at you, Starfield. 20 years later, and my feelings haven't changed one bit. I still love this game, and I adore it for all of its flaws and imperfections. It's a game that even after beating 10 plus times, I still wouldn't mind going in for a new playthrough. Even if all I would do is cruise around in a lowrider while listening to Guns N' Roses, NWA, Cypress Hill, or any other amazing radio track. I'd still do it just for the fact that the world that Rockstar managed to create here is one of the best open worlds ever. And please, how can I not mention the soundtrack? It's nothing short of amazing, and it's probably one of the best soundtracks in GTA games ever. That iconic spray can intro with the soundtrack starting up right after, just, oh boy.
Nice.
And not just that, the radio stations themselves, amazing. Nothing short of perfection. It's a shame that most new folks will have to rely on experiencing the Definitive Edition, as those versions are the only ones available. And they outright suck, especially San Andreas. Having now pretty much covered every major aspect of this beautiful game, I have to say my love for this game is something that will never fade, and I truly believe that it's the same for many people. All I can hope for, especially in the future, is that these original 3D era games will be preserved with some dignity for future generations to experience. No definitive editions, no get-rich-quick schemes by Strauss and Take-Two, just pure love and dedication by a team of people that grew up on these streets. With that said, thank you all for taking your time to watch this video, and of course thank you all for giving me the support you have. Please make sure to subscribe, as 99% of the people watching are not subscribed. Clicking the like and subscribe button is free and will help me out immensely to fulfill my lifelong dream of giving away free PCs to people in need. Subscribe now so you can potentially receive a free RTX 7090 card when this channel hits 10 million subscribers. Stay silly, keep edging, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
See you around, officer.